Hey there, Heather Ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Cutter Degrassi video, and this is video number 200 in the Degrassism era. Degrassism is a kind of historical Degrassi video that does not follow like a certain playlist and all that. Like I did unpopular opinions and hot takes. So a Degrassism is different because it's just a general stuff. It does count the top tens, like doing poll videos. That is a top 10 in itself. So that counts as a Degrassism. What also counts is like case studies of a character, just general asking about questions, not really making massive opinions. Um, a few series actually had their penultimate episodes be placed. I will be placing the one about Emma, the bricks in Emma's wall, about the whole thing about her and Manny's friendship, because that's a big one to be had. Like it was kind of awkward. Yeah, when I did my Emma case study thing, I didn't. Well, Manny's friendship with Emma was top of mind when I talked about things. Yeah, so I've done plenty of them and all that. Don't worry, I'll give you like a quick run through and all that. Also to note that, it could also be like, general knowledge stuff. Like, yeah, I'll get to that and then do the whole analytics thing, overthinking the Degrassiism. So anyway, the 200th has to do with time stand still. I purposely left number 200 for the time stand still universe. Well, last three, 197 through 199, is also a Degrassi time stand still video purposely put on October 12th because in Canada, that's when time stand still happened in winter. Not part two, of course. So I was thinking of doing a Degrassi AMA or Ask Me Anything about asking about the whole Rick Murray situation, what could happen, and all that. Only one person asked, and the main question was about Rick's mom and all that, and why the school let him back. So I'm thinking to myself, how do I salvage this if only one person called? Well, the fact is that I went through Microsoft Word, and yes, with Microsoft 360, I had Copilot, which is kind of the AI equivalent of Microsoft Word. So using that, I typed in the most pressing questions about the Rick Murray situation. It gave me 8 of them. Copilot gave me 8, and then I just came up with 2 of my own. So yeah, I'm just making sure I can do that. All right. Pressing question number 10 is Rick's parents. Did they fail their kid? And what's their legacy? Rick's parents, it's kind of complicated, but in season 3, we didn't get to see Rick's parents until Rick seemingly is in his mom's car while she gets his stuff after the Terry situation. And Spitter goes into the car and pulls Rick out and says, "What are you doing? You should be visiting her in the hospital." And then Rick's mom basically looks at Spitter and says, "Stay away from my son, both of you," as she told Paige that too. But the fact of the matter was that, we saw his mom and all that. She talks a little bit, and then when Time Stand Still Part 1 happens, she is trying to get Rick ready for the wacky brain thing, and his dad's out of town as a traveling salesman and all that, and Rick resents the fact his dad's not around. And then Rick's mom says that Rick is telling, well, to Toby, Rick says that you, Toby, Emma, and Jimmy are inseparable. Toby just gives a sure, and then he says, "And to think I wanted you to transfer schools. You worry too much, mother, and besides, we're gonna rule the school." That's a little bit of getting in your own head, don't you think? Rick's mom even wanted Rick to join another school, whereas other students also did that too, but didn't do it. And then we know well in Back in Black, the next episode after Time Stand Still, we find out that Toby has to go to Rick's visitation / funeral. I don't know that, and Toby's mom expects Toby to be there because Toby was Rick's only friend. It seemed. Of course, we see Rick's mom. We apparently see Rick's dad also crying near the coffin and all that. This balding guy that reminds me of Steve from the Drew Carey show. But the fact is that, it was like I really wanted to know what their aftermaths were like. Like what would have happened with them? Because I mean his dad had a gun in a suitcase, which was easily accessible to Rick. I mean, we didn't even get to see if there was a combination code. If that happened, then things would have happened. And then, you know, like did Rick's parents face any repercussions whatsoever? I wish we knew. Maybe they did. Maybe Rick's parents had to pay a settlement or something. Or maybe they would have gotten the settlement but got docked a lot of money because their son was their school shooter and all that. Number 9 is why didn't they show the deleted scenes? That's the one major pressing question I have. There were not one, not two, but 3 deleted scenes in this whole thing. The first deleted scene was in Mercy Street when Marco and Alex, as student council president and vice president, wanted Radich to back down from the whole thing about letting Rick back. All he says is that Terry's at a private school, I can't talk about her affairs and all that, and assures Marco and Alex that he will listen to their concerns, even though it doesn't look like it. Alex tries to get Radich to realize that letting Rick in is a danger to women, but all Radich says is that all I know is that he hasn't had a criminal charge, and anyone who studies at my school without a criminal charge will study there, like it or not. Like he kind of figures. But it's like, why didn't they put it in the first place? Because like it would have been like we would have found out Radish's position. Maybe it makes him more of a villain, makes him a little sympathetic. Maybe a bit of both. The second deleted scene was in Time Stand Still Part 2. After Spinner and Jimmy get in that literal fight, and somehow, in some way, they're not sent to the principal's office. They walk together with Craig and all that. And then Spitter can't help but see Rick with his painted feathers and does the clucking noises Raj once answers from Spinner. And then he goes up to Rick and says, "Don't you have anything else to wear?" And then, of course, Raj says, "I'm sorry for what happened. Take the rest of the day off. We'll figure something out." And then Rick says, "I have to go to my locker." Fine, but leave immediately afterwards. And then Snake says to Raj, "That's your plan to let him leave? He can't do more harm with him being absent." Snake presses Raj, and Raj basically retorts by saying, "This is not daycare. Making friends not part of the curriculum." Which means that Raj has missed the point, thinking the whole thing was with Rick trying to gain friends with Jimmy and all that. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And then deleted scene number 3 was in Back in Black when Toby and has to clean out Rick's side of the locker with the role playing dice. No, sorry, he cleans out his locker and looks at the role playing dice he won from Rick. Sean looks in amazement with them, and then Craig and Sean have an argument about why are they praising Jimmy, and basically Sean says our guy died. And all that. So yeah, that could have been huge. Number 8 is what is Rick's legacy in Degrassi? That is the pressing question. His legacy is basically the number one Degrassi villain of all time. I mean, you got Peter with his whole framing Manny by giving her topless video to everyone in school, managing to pick up Emma as a girlfriend, and basically ruining Sean because he was scared that Sean and Emma were going to get back together. You have Jay, who's the devil on everyone's shoulder. From seasons 3 to 7, it seemed like a new character was under Jay's spell, quote unquote. You, of course, have Bobby, Fiona's boyfriend. You have Luke Baker for sexually assaulting Zoe. You have like Vince and Tiny. Maybe not Tiny, but yeah. But anyway, yeah. So the legacy is he's a massive villain. His storyline is famously morally gray. Is like, do we praise this guy? Do we hate this guy? The writers made it seem like, although he was the shooter, he had a bit of a conscience. And I'm like, yeah, right. Although one poignant thing for maybe he had a conscience, maybe, just maybe, is when he was shot Jimmy. But if Rick really wanted to shoot Jimmy, he would have point, had point blank at Jimmy and shot him in the head, not the spine. Oh, so, and a lot of people say, did it change the way the series approached topics like bullying, mental health, and violence? In a sense, yes, and in a sense, no. It's kind of awkward. Number 7 is, was Rick's storyline necessary? That is the question. I mean, was it exploitative? No, because Degrassi had handled sensitive topics before, including Claude offing himself in Degrassi High and saying that, everyone feels overwhelmed, but the fact is that you don't kill yourself. But a lot of people said, was it necessary? It was actually necessary because it pushed the narrative of several characters, especially Terry. It gave Terry a good storyline, and then all of a sudden, after season 3, she was gone, and CTV execs kind of have something to blame for not letting Terry come back. I mean, if Terry came back, we don't know her reactions to the whole Rick Murray situation. Maybe she's asked everyone to stop. Like they actually talked to a counselor who worked at during the Columbine disaster in 1999, and they tried to get some points of view and all of that. But it was necessary because it pushed Terry into a good storyline because she was almost always on the sidelines. It gave Rick some airtime. It gave Emma a cause to try to be her cause girl self. It caused conflict with Paige and Jimmy and Spinner and basically blew into their play world. But it was necessary to handle it because, the US had a lot of these problems, more so than Canada. I mean, I know it's a Canadian show. And of course, nowadays it was weird. Anyway, number 6 is, how did the show handle the aftermath? That is a good question. It's like, after the tragic events, how effectively did they address the emotional and psychological repercussions for the victims and the school community? And was it a realistic portrayal of trauma and recovery? Um, maybe. It wasn't like super big. But remember, this show ran in 2004 and things are different 21 years later. So, they did what they could. Let's just say that. Trauma and recovery. Realistically, I say yeah, especially in Emma. Because Emma for sure had the whole trauma situation and all that. So everyone needs to figure out, you know, did the show handle the aftermath? Well, it kind of did. Some characters deserved a better aftermath. I mean, Toby kind of got an aftermath, but not too much. Um, mm, like Manny wasn't involved in it. She should have had something to do. But yeah, the aftermath is just huge because it portrayed well, Spitter's guilt over having Jimmy shot and him staying quiet for 3 months and trying not to piss off Jay, of course. And of course, Jay pushing Rick and I mean, sorry, not Rick, Spitter and Alex to keep quiet about their roles and his role, of course. I mean, Degrassi handled how, somehow in some way, Radish was not really working towards an a solution in the aftermath. He was working towards trying to make the school look good and by association himself look good. And JT and Liberty called him out on it. He got mad, as he normally does, and cannot take criticism too well. And it led to him being canned. Like the school board decided, we don't want you. Nah, bro, nah. It handled Jimmy's aftermath decently and all that, with him trying to realize he's in a wheelchair and that his parents are not really too keen on helping him for some dumb reason. It just has a lot of after effects and all that. So that's for sure. And, especially of Emma's aftermath, it portrayed perfectly that Emma had the trauma and was trying to fix her problems because of the way she was portrayed in the first 3+ seasons. She thought she needed to be the old Emma, but she couldn't be, no matter what she tried. And being with Jay was trying to be spontaneous and try to prove that she's not the same one note character. But unfortunately, it all failed in the end. Number 5 is, could the other characters have done more? Because, Emma, Sean, and Spitter played significant roles in Rick's story. But did these characters do enough to help Rick? Or did they inadvertently push him into isolation? What were the students who witnessed the bullying and stayed silent? I think personally, the students that witnessed the bullying were all for it. They know about the Rick story with Terry. They know Rick deserves some justice and all that. It was more of a mob justice thing with the other characters, like the students. They wanted to push Rick out of Degrassi, which never happened. And, a lot of them, I think, needed a scapegoat. I mean, Jay was right about the school maybe needing a scapegoat. Because let's face facts. Um, Most of the students could easily just pin things on Spinner and just alleviate their guilt over the fact they bullied Rick. I mean, the whole thing with the mob mentality, we'll get to that in another question, but anyhow, yeah, they could have done more. Well, depends on what side of the fence you're on. Are you trying to help Rick or are you trying to hurt Rick and all that? Did they push him into isolation? Um, I say not really. He's not really isolated. Like he feels lonely, and then he decides to retaliate for his things and all that. Number 4 is, was the prank that led to the tragedy justified? It was a turning point. Was this taken too far by his classmates, and did it contribute to Rick's breakdown? How does this reflect on the culture of the school and the role of the bystanders? Yeah, I should have did that. Put the 10 questions up on Degrassi Reddit and have someone talk about them. Like, but the fact of the matter is, too little, too late. Was the prank justified? Well, with the whole factor of Rick seemingly not getting the hint to leave Degrassi, everyone was just upset and raised their ire to an 11. So Rick, thinks he's okay. And then, he decides to retaliate with the spray paint. And of course, Spinner, Jay, and Alex realize that they have to take things into their own hands because if they let the school find out, the school board, Raj find out, they would have to implicate themselves. So, yeah, they had to do something about it. And they did the paint and feathers and promptly made sure that Rick was alone for the tiebreaker, the last round, and made sure that he had no playing idea. Was it Was it justified? Well, it's just the students going too far. Like they should have easily said, "Hey, you know what? Rick's coming back with no strings attached. I think we're gonna be in trouble." But yeah, because Rick went back to the school clutching his backpack and all that. So that was just like, you know, pure awkwardness at its whole. So, like the students bullied Rick for one main purpose because of what he did to Terry, but they were just taking things a little too far. Number 3, how did bullying contribute to Rick's actions? He was a victim of severe bullying. How much responsibility do the bullies bear for the tragic outcome, and how much is Rick accountable for his own actions? Where's the line between victim and perpetrator? That's kind of what the writers were like. What's the line between victim and perpetrator? Rick was victimized. He brushed it off. He got friends. And then he got Emma and Toby's attention because it was Wacky Brain and then Heather slash Jimmy. The fact is that, Rick was accountable because he was the one who pulled the trigger, who wanted to kill Emma. And then Sean stepped in and saved Emma's life. So, anyway, yeah, Rick was victimized. And we all know that. But how much responsibility do the bullies bear? Um, Well, they pushed Rick into that because Rick was taking the gun back to the school, although it was actually also because of Emma. Like he was mad about Paige, and Paige didn't bully him per se, or just left the situation. But I think Rick is accountable for his own actions and all that. But of course, he's dead, so a lot of things went to the grave with him, in a sense. The students were just mad, and you can see why. And how much responsibility did the bullies bear? Well, given how Spinner was ostracized by the school, and Hatzalakos did tell him that a boy's in a wheelchair and a boy's in a grave because of your stupid reactions, your stupid actions. I mean, like, blaming him for Jimmy's being in a wheelchair, I understand. But blaming him for Rick's death? Are you nuts? It seems like Hatzalakos was just trying to put her zero tolerance thing, put her foot down, and please the school board who forced them to do zero tolerance. But where's the zero tolerance with Peter? Not happening. Why? I don't know. Number two is, did the school fail Rick? That is the biggest question of all time, in my mind. Is, did the school fail Rick? Yes, they did. And Snake even acknowledged it in that scene in Time Stand Still Part 2 when he tells, like, the Kerwins, the Isaacs, and the Simpsons, if you will, that yes, we all took take responsibility in not helping Rick out. We all should be blamed for not taking Rick's actions seriously enough. Why did we wait till the situation with the shooting to find warning signs, to find answers? I mean, Snake at least took accountability. I mean, what other teachers took accountability? Not Sove, not Perino, not Quan even, and definitely not you know who, aka Radich. Did the school fail Rick? Yes. But of course, the main question is, did Radich fail Rick? He did. But it wasn't all Radich's fault. I mean, Rick did not ask Radich clearly about the whole situation. He should have said he was bullied. He should have had concrete evidence. Radich would have believed him. Yay. But no, he just had to be all macho man. The whole thing with Radich is, I think he did fail Rick. But he failed the school more so. I'm going to keep saying that till the cows come home. Boo. But the fact of the matter is, they should never have let Rick back because they kind of should have had the foresight that every student's going to get mad at Rick for what he did the previous year. And all that. The main question is, did he get expelled? It's probably a yes and a no. People say yes, he got expelled. And all that. But then, they had to give him a second chance and all that. Rick wanted to come back. Rick always thought he could come back in the lion's den. And it makes sense. So, anyway, that's the whole thing with Degrassi. Is the school failed Rick, but Raj failed the students, especially with the fact letting Rick back in the school in the first place. Because students were obviously upset. And instead of going over the the video board, or even doing an assembly, Radich basically left the students with no alternative. They're thinking, well, he's not going to do anything to get Rick out of school, so we've got to take things into our own hands. And into their own hands, they did. I think the whole thing to bully Rick was because of the Rick Terry thing, but it was also because the school refused to help him out, and they felt helpless, and they said, "Well, we got to take matters in our own hands." And sometimes people will do that. If the school fails them, they'll take matters in their own paws and all that. And number one is, was Rick always destined to be a villain? Well, considering they told Ephraim Ellis about the whole thing, about what he was going to do in the whole school thing, including the shooting, I think that they made him the villain. They wanted to write a storyline about domestic violence. They wanted to write a storyline about revenge. They wanted to do a storyline about a student coming back and basically putting themselves in the lion's den and then not being helped a lot. And they were trying to pressed the thing about how Rick's actions affected everybody and all that, and how Rick's storyline hurt people in the aftermath. I mean, Rick's storyline, what? Who did it help in the end? It never helped anyone. It didn't help Jimmy because he was in the wheelchair. It didn't help Spinner because he was wrecked with guilt, and then when he admitted his guilt, he was expelled. It didn't. Well, it helped Jay out because Jay says we did the world a favor, but that's fucking Jay. It didn't help Alex because Alex had all the secrets and all that. It did. It didn't help Toby because now Toby was fraught with guilt over being with Rick. But fortunately, JT came back only because Manny chewed out JT. It helped JT and Liberty. It did help JT and Liberty realize they were a couple, but there were troubles in that relationship. It didn't help the staff out. Yeah, it didn't help the students. It didn't help the staff. It didn't help Radish out, especially Radish, because Raj in his stupidity to try to get the school's reputation up and his reputation up kind of made enemies of people, especially Snake, who was pretty much his last true ally. It obviously didn't do Emma any favors because Emma had the guilt and the trauma built in her, and although she made strides to try to better herself and all that, she still had the internalization with the Rick situation because, like, she felt guilty about herself, and then she tried so hard to change her perceptions of what people thought of her that she was just trying so hard to be like everyone else. And that was huge, very huge. I mean, Emma meant well, but it just didn't make sense. And when you look at things, well, it did help Degrassi in a way because then Degrassi didn't have to be outed for more things than they were okay for. That's kind of a weird sentence, but anyhow, those are 10 pressing questions about the Rick Murray storyline, and that is Degrassism number 200. And guess what? It'll be time to do some analytics and then just show you the 200 Degrassisms and all that. That's just how I roll. Anyway, thanks for supporting my projects because, without your Reddit support, I wouldn't be doing this stuff in the first place. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond.